Numbers chapter 19. The Lord gave Moses and Aaron the following law. The people of Israel must bring Moses a reddish-brown cow that has nothing wrong with it and that has never been used for plowing. The Lord gave Moses and Aaron the following law. The people of Israel must bring Moses a reddish-brown cow that has nothing wrong with it and that has never been used for plowing. Moses will give it to Eleazar the priest, then it will be led outside the camp and killed while Eleazar watches. He will dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times in the direction of the sacred tent. Then the whole cow, including its skin, meat, blood, and insides must be burned. A priest is to throw a stick of cedar wood, a hyssop branch, and a piece of red yarn into the fire. After the ceremony, the priest is to take a bath and wash his clothes. Only then can he go back into the camp, but he remains unclean and unfit for worship until evening. The man who burned the cow must also wash his clothes and take a bath, but he is also unclean until evening. A man who isn't unclean must collect the ashes of the burnt cow and store them outside the camp in a clean place. The people of Israel can mix these ashes with the water used in the ceremony to wash away sin. The man who collects the ashes must wash his clothes, but will remain unclean until evening. This law must always be obeyed by the people of Israel and the foreigners living among them. If you touch a dead body, you will be unclean for 7 days. But if you wash with the water mixed with the cow's ashes on the 3rd day and again on the 7th day, you will be clean and acceptable for worship. You must wash yourself on those days. If you don't, you will remain unclean. Suppose you touch a dead body, but refuse to be made clean by washing with the water mixed with ashes. You will be guilty of making my sacred tent unclean and will no longer belong to the people of Israel. If someone dies in a tent while you are there, you will be unclean for 7 days. And anyone who later enters the tent will also be unclean. Any open jar in the tent is unclean. If you touch the body of someone who died or was killed, or if you touch a human bone or a grave, you will be unclean for 7 days. Before you can be made clean, someone who is clean must take some of the ashes from the burnt cow and stir them into a pot of spring water. That same person must dip a hyssop branch in the water and ashes, then sprinkle it on the tent and everything in it, including everyone who was inside. If you have touched a human bone, a grave, or a dead body, you must be sprinkled with that water. Before you can be made clean, someone who is clean must take some of the ashes from the burnt cow and stir them into a pot of spring water. That same person must dip a hyssop branch in the water and ashes, then sprinkle it on the tent and everything in it, including everyone who was inside. If you have touched a human bone, a grave, or a dead body, you must be sprinkled with that water. If this is done on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, you will be clean. Then after you take a bath and wash your clothes, you can worship that evening. If you are unclean and refuse to be made clean by washing with the water mixed with ashes, you will be guilty of making my sacred tent unclean, and you will no longer belong to the people of Israel. These laws will never change. The man who sprinkled the water and the ashes on you when you were unclean must also wash his clothes. And whoever touches this water is unclean until evening. When you are unclean, everything you touch becomes unclean, and anyone who touches you will be unclean until evening. Numbers chapter 20. The people of Israel arrived at the Zin desert during the 1st month and set up camp near the town of Kadesh. It was there that Miriam died and was buried. The Israelites had no water, so they went to Moses and Aaron and complained, "Moses, we'd be better off if we had died along with the others in front of the Lord's sacred tent. You brought us into this desert, and now we and our livestock are going to die. Egypt was better than this horrible place. At least there we had grain and figs and grapevines and pomegranates. But now we don't even have any water." Moses and Aaron went to the entrance to the sacred tent, where they bowed down. The Lord appeared to them in all of his glory and said, "Moses, get your walking stick. Then you and Aaron call the people together and command that rock to give you water." That's how you will provide water for the people of Israel and their livestock, and said, "Moses, get your walking stick." Then you and Aaron call the people together and command that rock to give you water. That's how you will provide water for the people of Israel and their livestock." Moses obeyed and took his stick from the sacred tent. After he and Aaron had gathered the people around the rock, he said, "Look, you rebellious people, and you will see water flow from this rock." He raised his stick in the air and struck the rock 2 times. At once, water gushed from the rock, and the people and their livestock had water to drink. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you refused to believe in my power, these people did not respect me. And so, you will not be the ones to lead them into the land I have promised." The Israelites had complained against the Lord, and he had shown them his holy power by giving them water to drink. So they named the place Meribah, which means, complaining. Moses sent messengers from Israel's camp near Kadesh with this message for the king of Edom: "We are Israelites, your own relatives, and we're sure you have heard the terrible things that have happened to us. Our ancestors settled in Egypt and lived there a long time. But later the Egyptians were cruel to us, and when we begged our Lord for help, he answered our prayer and brought us out of that land. Now we are camped at the border of your territory, near the town of Kadesh. Please let us go through your country. We won't go near your fields or vineyards, and we won't drink any water from your wells. We will stay on the main road until we leave your territory." But the king of Edom answered, "No, I won't let you go through our country. And if you try, we will attack you." Moses sent back this message: "We promise to stay on the main road, and if any of us or our livestock drink your water, we will pay for it. We just want to pass through." But the king insisted, "You can't go through our land." Then Edom sent out its strongest troops to keep Israel from passing through its territory. So the Israelites had to go in another direction. After the Israelites had left Kadesh and had gone as far as Mount Hor on the Edomite border, the Lord said, "Aaron, this is where you will die. You and Moses disobeyed me at Meribah, and so you will not enter the land I promised the Israelites. Moses, go with Aaron and his son Eleazar to the top of the mountain. Then take Aaron's priestly robe from him and place it on Eleazar. Aaron will die there." Moses obeyed, and everyone watched as he and Aaron and Eleazar walked to the top of Mount Hor. Moses then took the priestly robe from Aaron and placed it on Eleazar. Aaron died there. When Moses and Eleazar came down, the people knew that Aaron had died, and they mourned his death for 30 days. Judges chapter 11 verses 16 to 17. When the Israelites came from Egypt, they traveled across the desert to the Red Sea and then to Kadesh. They sent messengers to the king of Edom and said, "Please, let us go through your country." But the king of Edom refused. They also sent messengers to the king of Moab, but he wouldn't let them cross his country either. And so the Israelites stayed at Kadesh. Deuteronomy chapter 10 verses 6 to 7. Later we set up camp at the wells belonging to the descendants of Jachin. Then we moved on and camped at Mosera, where Aaron died and was buried, and his son Eleazar became the priest. Next, we camped at Gudgoda and then at Jotbatha, where there are flowing streams. Deuteronomy chapter 2 verses 2 to 7. Until the Lord said, "Moses, Israel has wandered in these hills long enough. Turn and go north. And give the people these orders: be very careful, because you will soon go through the land that belongs to your relatives, the descendants of Esau. They are afraid of you, but don't start a war with them. I have given them the hill country of Seir, so I won't give any of it to you, not even enough to set a foot on. And as you go through their land, you will have to buy food and water from them. The Lord has helped us and taken care of us during the past 40 years that we have been in this huge desert. We've had everything we needed, and the Lord has blessed us and made us successful in whatever we have done." Numbers chapter 33 verses 37 to 42. When they left Kadesh, they came to Mount Hor, on the border of Edom. That's where the Lord commanded Aaron the priest to go to the top of the mountain. Aaron died there on the first day of the 5th month, 40 years after the Israelites left Egypt. He was 123 years old at the time. It was then that the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the southern desert of Canaan, heard that Israel was headed that way. The Israelites left Mount Hor and headed toward Moab. Along the way, they camped at Zalmonah, Punon. Numbers chapter 21 verses 1 to 9. The Canaanite king of Arad lived in the southern desert of Canaan, and when he heard that the Israelites were on their way to the village of Atharim, he attacked and took some of them hostage. The Israelites prayed, "Our Lord, if you will help us defeat these Canaanites, we will completely destroy their towns and everything in them, to show that they belong to you." The Lord answered their prayer and helped them wipe out the Canaanite army and completely destroy their towns. That's why one of the towns is named Hormah, which means, destroyed place. The Israelites had to go around the territory of Edom, so when they left Mount Hor, they headed south toward the Red Sea. But along the way, the people became so impatient that they complained against God and said to Moses, "Did you bring us out of Egypt, just to let us die in the desert? There's no water out here, and we can't stand this awful food." Then the Lord sent poisonous snakes that bit and killed many of them. Some of the people went to Moses and admitted, "It was wrong of us to insult you and the Lord. Now please ask him to make these snakes go away." Moses prayed, and the Lord answered, "Make a snake out of bronze and place it on top of a pole. Anyone who gets bitten can look at the snake and be saved from death." Moses obeyed the Lord. And all of those who looked at the bronze snake lived, even though they had been bitten by the poisonous snakes.